Welcome in, everybody, to Basketball by Association. That's BBA for all you youngins. My name is Arky Shea, pointing on the video screen that some of you, a couple of you, one of you might see. That is Joel C. Cortez. Joel, how be you, sir? How many points did you score this week?
Not as many as everyone else, but there's still time to one-up everybody because I think that's what's going on. Welcome to the show.
I feel a 72 burger on coming out of you today. You ready?
Well, I better eat some Wheaties before that, but sure. Yeah, let's get right to it because I know we're short on time today. We're going to name the episode. This is, episode 129, I believe? Yeah, it's episode 129. There's only one player to choose from in NBA history. He's a two-time All-Star. He won the championship in 2007. He was on the 95-96 All-Rookie team. He was once traded for Jason Kidd and played 14 years in the NBA, retiring in 2010. Began his career in Phoenix, but that is not where he is most well known. In fact, he was traded from Phoenix. This is going to really narrow it down for you. From Phoenix to Dallas as part of bringing Jason Kidd from his original Maverick stint over to the Suns, where he played for a handful of seasons. This guy did average 18 points a game or more 7 times in his 14-year career. He did hit 40% from downtown, I believe 5 times during his career. And stayed in Texas nearly the rest of the way.
Is that all I get?
That's all you get.
Man, I feel like I should be all of it, right?
He won a ring. This will narrow it down further. He won a ring in Dallas, which is where he played the bulk of his career from his age 23 through 31 seasons. He did win a ring with the Mavs.
I don't even know if he was on this team. If I ask for, okay, so I want to feel like I might have this one, all right? I maybe, but I don't know if he was. Okay, so 2 things I'm worried about real quick, and then we can get to the guest of the show. I'm
wrong. He did not win his ring with the Mavericks. He won it after moving on to the other Texas team.
Okay, so because
he won it in an 07. I was off by a year.
Okay, so that makes it a little. So I don't know if I'm trying to remember if this guy I'm about to guess is 95, 96 season or 96, 97.
Played college ball at Wisconsin.
That's not gonna help me. I love doing this college stuff. Like I feel like I crush knowing where guys played in college. Okay, so I can't remember where he played in college. So can I have the first letter of the first initial? I have a guess. I'll just
first letter of his first name.
Yeah, first letter.
It's an initial. M.
Okay, I'm really going on a limb here.
Let's do it.
I'm probably off by a year, but this is going to be my one guess, and then you can tell me who it is. Shoot, I don't know if he played it. I don't know if he played at Wisconsin. Because when he gave me Dallas, I started to go Michael Finley, right?
It's Michael Finley.
It's Michael Finley?
It's Michael Finley.
Okay.
Yeah. See, I was off. I thought
the ring wasn't in. He didn't get the ring, and I couldn't remember where he was when Dallas won their ring.
Yeah, he was in San Antonio, so he went and was a starter there for the bulk of his time in San Antonio until the last season or so, and got his ring in 07 with the Spurs. I had it mixed up and thought he got his ring with the Mavs when they finally got theirs for Dirk, but he was gone by that point. So yeah, it is Michael Finley. And Basketball Reference, who I love to use for this little game, also lists nicknames for players. The only nickname listed for Michael Finley is Fin Dog. Really?
I've never heard
That's the best anybody came up with for him? Really?
His entire NBA career, they just settled like the first thing that came out of someone's mouth. They're like, that's fine. That's fine, whatever. We're not going to do that.
My 5-year-old nephew calls me that, so that's the nickname now.
He played at Wisconsin. I don't have a firm memory of that, to be honest with you. So, okay, cool. All right, well, this is the Michael Finley episode. You guys were wondering when we get to it, and we finally got here. It was episode 129 to get there. Joe, let's talk about some things. One thing you wanted to talk about last week, and I think it's perfect to be able to talk about it this week, because they got dudes out here killing people on live national television with Dunkaroos. Joe, the Sacramento Kings are formidable. They're a formidable sparky bunch. That's right. This is the podcast that starts NBA talk with the Sacramento Kings. Joe, I want to be honest with you and our listeners. You were kind of on this one in the preseason. You saw that there was something there that we need to be paying attention to, and we're 35, 38 games in, and we've got something to pay attention to.
They're doing better than even I thought. My prediction had been they're going to be watchable this year. Like, you should probably tune into some Kings games of your own volition. No gun against your head this time. Just do it. They're going to be watchable. But I did, in looking at the Pacific Division, still kind of say I don't see how they can finish better than fifth. I didn't think the Lakers would be this lousy. Now, granted, Anthony Davis is out for the umpteenth time, but they were fairly lousy-ish before he was out. So I figured the Lakers at least would still finish ahead of the Kings, and I didn't give Sacramento any chance over the Clippers or the Suns, who, by the way, Sacramento is in front of right now, and I gave them less than a 0 chance against the Golden State Warriors, who the Kings are also out in front of right now. They're sitting fifth in the Western Conference, but first in the Pacific Division, which is just nuts. But again, they're 20 and 17. So we're talking 3 games over 500. The Clippers, the Suns, the Warriors are all within a game of that.
Let's contextualize. 20 and 17 is not what anyone was really thinking this team would be. So, like, as far as saying that, hey, this isn't a 35-2 team, that's fine. They don't have to be. They're a respectable team again, and that is a far cry from what they've been for the past decade plus.
It is. And not only do you have all 5 starters averaging double figures, but you have a 6th man of the year candidate in Malik Monk, who's averaging 14 off the game, 14 per game off the bench. They can hit you offensively, but they haven't been terrible defensively. Bench production falls off quite a bit after that, but they've gotten good minutes out of Terrence Davis, Davion Mitchell. Sometimes it's Trey Lyles, sometimes it's Chimezie Metu or Rashawn Holmes. They're still trying to figure out that front court backup rotation. But this is one of those teams that I think you've got 2 all-star candidates in your starting lineup in De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis, who I called out in the preseason. And that's why I said, if for nothing else, go watch that pairing now that they've had an offseason to prepare. I was really excited when that trade got made last season. I saw some things I really liked, but the wins didn't necessarily follow once Sabonis got there. In fact, I think their winning percentage was slightly worse once he arrived. But with an offseason and what I saw out of the pick and roll out of those two and how versatile and how smart both those players are, and then just the fact that, like, Harrison Barnes is a pro, Kevin Huerter is a pro, Keegan Murray is a guy that I think sneakily fits there with what they wanted to do. I did not see Malik Monk coming off the bench and doing what he did. He looked like he was on the NBA scrap heap over the last couple of years, but you find that right situation, that right role on the right team, that right opportunity, and all of a sudden guys will show out, and Monk is doing that right now. So is this sustainable for this group? You have to imagine the Warriors are going to make a run. You have to imagine the Clippers are going to make a run. The Suns are going to get Devin Booker at some point back and be better. The Kings, have they kind of peaked already as far as being a competitive team that you shouldn't overlook? But do they have another gear to find? Can they be better? That's going to be the big question going forward. But again, I'll say this. If you have not checked out the Kings yet, go watch a couple games. It is worth a league pass special when you got nothing else to do.
Yeah, they won 30 games, 30, 31, and 31 each of the last 3 years. They're at 20 now.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty good spot to sort of be in. And I think what's important for Sacramento is not only do they have, I don't want to say a good young core, they just have a respectable good team with a stud of De'Aaron Fox who just murdered a dude on TV last night. Sorry, Atlanta, it just happens.
Atlanta won, though. I mean, the Hawks won for what it's worth, but despite the murder,
the lasting image is that one of their players has passed away due to De'Aaron Fox's antics. the important part is that this is a team that is exciting to watch. They're actually pretty fun to watch, and I've caught a couple of their games that I wouldn't necessarily think I would be getting, despite you recommending them.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that they keep playing pretty darn well, they play pretty good offense. They're an interesting team to pay attention to. They're a fun team to give if you're looking for, your team's not playing that night, but you're looking for another team that's
Exactly.
playing. Sacramento's a team that you don't just go blah anymore, right? And that crowd they're showing up to the arena for them. They are loud and excited for them. I was watching a few of the highlights of the Atlanta game last night, actually this morning, and like at all points throughout that game, like they were loud, they were into it. And again, this isn't a team that's leading the West right now by destroying people.
Mm-hmm.
They're just a much better product than what they've seen over the last bunch of years. And this is a good spot to be in Sacramento. This is a really good spot to find themselves in right now, 37 games into their season.
In the past, over the last few seasons, like you talked about, basically once De'Aaron Fox got there, and DeMarcus Cousins was on his way out, the Kings, and even when Cousins was there, they were a team that could randomly give you a game and you might be in a dogfight with them because there was some talent there. But they were classically that team that would get up by 20 points and you never feared them once. There was always that high probability that they were going to blow that lead. They were going to make some dumb plays or just young plays or whatever it was, and you were going to climb back into it. You don't see that happening anymore. When they jump out, they've been able to keep it. When they've been down, they're able to fight back. It's just a much more professional, predictable unit, and I think that has a lot to do with the maturation now of Fox. But you also look at the fact that, like, Harrison Barnes has won a championship before. Sabonis has played on good teams and been the man before. Kevin Huerter has played in Atlanta and been to playoff games. Can't say the same about Malik Monk and Keegan Murray, and a lot of the guys coming off the bench have been in Sacramento over the last few seasons, with the exception of KZ Okpala coming over from Miami. And Trey Lyles bounced around with Utah and Denver, San Antonio before this. But there just seems to be much more confidence in that they know who they are. They know what they're doing. They're not going to deviate from that. And even if they lose, they stuck to the game plan. And Sabonis averaging 19 points. He's leading the league in rebounds at 12.5, nearly 7 assists. Almost a steal per game. He's low in the block numbers, which is always surprising for him, but he's not a big shot blocker. De'Aaron Fox, 24 points a game, 4.5 boards, 6 assists, and they're getting 15, 16 points out of Huerter, 14 out of Monk, 14 out of Barnes, nearly 12 out of Murray. Like you said, there's punch, but it's not spread out across the roster. You do get worried if either one of Fox or Sabonis goes down. And you can say this about most teams, but if either one of those guys goes down, they're in big trouble. And I still, when I look at the West, I see the Clippers, they're up in the playoff field, but I look down and one of Phoenix or Golden State is going to get up into the playoff field as well, maybe even both. That would not bode well for the Kings' chances through all of this. But I look at Sacramento and I say very clearly this is a play-in caliber team and maybe even a 7 or 8 seed play-in caliber team if they can hold on to this. And we'll see if Minnesota is able to jump back into that top 10. I don't know if Utah or Portland is sustainable. Utah feels like the weak link out of that group now, despite the hot start.
Well, listen, Sacramento hasn't played postseason basketball in like 16 years.
They've got the longest streak now, yeah.
Yeah, so like any type of breath to get into that, it's going to be huge for that franchise. Mm-hmm. And again, there are people excited around Sacramento. Sacramento gets a lot of junk for being sort of a not into a team, but like their team has been bad, borderline unwatchable for a lot of this stretch. They've been a little better over the last few years than what they were, but they've made a big jump this year as far as watchability. Like you mentioned, they are a very watchable team, so we'll keep an eye on them as the season progresses. Speaking of that 16 years, something happened in the NBA this week that had not happened. Well, at least we hadn't seen that amount of points scored since about the 2006, 16 years ago mark. I guess we're in 2023 now, so I'm going to have to get used to that at some point. But the Cleveland Cavaliers have themselves, what do we call them? Do we call him Donovan? Donovan? It's a young guy. We haven't heard much of him. Donovan Mitchell fella goes for 71 points in a big comeback win over the Bulls earlier this week. It's the most points scored in the Basketball Association since Kobe went for per near 100. He went for 81 in 2006. Do you remember who that was against, by the way?
81 in 2006 was against the Raptors.
The wonderful, delicious Toronto Raptors.
They were tasty that night. Yep.
No affiliation to the story. Just thought I'd throw that out there, see if Joel can get it. He got it nailed it. Okay, so we didn't get much talk to, and we wanted to, the Cleveland Cavaliers last week. I think this is a pretty good entree into discussion about that team. Joel, how serious should we feel about the Cleveland Cavaliers? They're 25-14 now. They've won 3 in a row. They're a game and a half back of what has turned into a really sporty Eastern Conference all of a sudden. Is this an Eastern Conference championship legitimate contender right now?
Absolutely. Now, granted, they've got some company. Boston, Milwaukee continue to be legit.
There's a lot of dudes up there to battle with.
Brooklyn is really, really good. We'll see as they get into a tougher stretch of the schedule, whether they're a lead or not.
Brooklyn, I'm interested because I'm wondering, once they get off this heater, which will eventually happen, what will they settle into?
Right. And you pointed out last week already that the schedule with some of these wins was a little bit shaky. So what happens when they get into that tough portion? I hear you. And then Philly is playing really good basketball and feels like they're on the verge of being in that elite conversation, but Cleveland is right there. So a lot of times, at least last year, Cleveland had a really hot start. They were up top 3 in the East, and we looked at that as an anomaly. We said, yeah, it's a good young team. A lot of us picked them to be bottom 3 in the East. Good for them. Let's see what happens here. And they cooled off once they got into the play-in tournament. I don't feel that way about them now at all. They are deep. They are dangerous. A lot of it has to do with Donovan Mitchell arriving, but Darius Garland being a year older, and the fact that they were able to fill out the bench. I thought that was really a tough spot for them last year, especially once Ricky Rubio went down midway through the season. It was that they're a young starting 5. There's a lot of talent there. It's a really good starting 5, kind of almost like you look at Sacramento right now, but even younger than Sacramento would be. But the bench just didn't have battle-tested guys if you're going to go into a playoff series. And now you look at them and you go, they're 10 deep. You've got Garland and Rubio, who's coming back any day now. At the point guard, Donovan Mitchell, Isaac Okoro, Karis LeVert, Jetty Osman, Dean Wade will come back at some point, all at their wings. Evan Mobley, Kevin Love, Lamar Stevens, Jared Allen, and Robin Lopez in the front court rotation. Like, you've got options. You've got some that are elite or near elite options, and you've got everybody else who's at least solid and or playoff tested. And that's really what you want. I look at the Cavs roster, and barring a major injury, I don't see any big move that they have to make or any area where it's like, yeah, this is a weak link. I think they're good to go to take this group into the playoffs and see how far you can get. As far as like Donovan Mitchell, 71, an amazing performance, an amazing game. They did not have Darius Garland. They did not have Evan Mobley that night. You figure that's about 35 points of production between the two of them, maybe a little bit more. And Donovan Mitchell single-handedly picked up that 35 points of production and added it onto, his own nearly 30 points per game that he's been averaging in Cleveland. So phenomenal. It's a perfect situation for him, even better than I thought it would be. When he was in Utah, an elite offensive player, very good during the regular season, but you would see in some of these tough games and playoff series, Utah didn't have another really good scorer to pair with him.
Options.
Yeah. I mean, that's not what Rudy Gobert is.
No.
That's not what Mike Conley was at that point in his career. And so the defense could load up on Mitchell. Now in Cleveland, you can't do that because he's got shooters all over the place. He's got lob options. He's got Darius Garland, who's another bona fide number 1 scorer. And with just that little more room that he's got to operate, it's paying huge dividends. But him being such a dangerous scorer himself and a willing passer is making everybody else's job easier. So it literally is a win-win situation for both Donovan Mitchell and the rest of the roster. 71 points is amazing, but my last caveat that I want to give here, and it's not, I mean, it is a backhand compliment, but I'm really not trying to throw shade. He got his 71. Luka got his 60. Clay had 54, I think, on the same night that Donovan Mitchell got his 71. And the NBA is all abuzz about the scoring. Every single one of those games was an overtime game. And so I don't want to take away the fact that, like, to score 71 points, period, in any amount of time in a single NBA game is a huge accomplishment. But 5 extra minutes doesn't hurt. And it didn't hurt Clay and it didn't hurt Luka. And if anything else to me, and I'm not a Kobe stan, but it puts the Kobe game up on an even higher pedestal because that was done in regulation. And some of these others are a little bit inflated with the extra.
Well, I'm going to go out on the record and say Kobe sucked. No, Kobe was great.
You'll get some emails.
Listen, Kobe came out of that game. Like, he eventually came out of that game. He could have, maybe if he just kept chunking it, couldn't have gotten to the triple digits. Who knows? That sort of wasn't what he was doing. It wasn't what he was going for early on in that game. So you sort of find out how that second half was so much more prolific than that first half was. You're like, oh, okay, maybe this could have. Regardless, I don't have to be the first one to defend Kobe or the last one. Kobe has lots of defenders, and he should. He's a world-renowned, amazing basketball player, top 10 easy NBA, top 5, maybe top 2, depending on who you talk to. Depending on who you talk to.
Yeah,
depending on who you talk to.
Don't talk to me on that one.
Well, Joel, we can. That seems more like an off-season discussion, but who knows? We may get you to that Kobe discussion once more. I will not go against the 71 at all by Donovan Mitchell because 2 things. One, there's been a ton of 50-point games, 60-point games since 2006. No one's hit 71. No matter how many overtimes they've gotten, so I know the 5 minutes doesn't hurt, but it doesn't mean he was chucking it and had the ball for 5 minutes just playing Papa Shot.
Right.
So it again doesn't hurt.
However, in overtime, when you got somebody that's hot and your lead guy, you are going to feature them and they are going to get those shots. But I digress. Keep going.
So the thing is that he brought that team back from 21 points down in that game to beat Chicago. And he, like you say, he put that team on his back. He was that reason because the team was shorthanded that the team ended up winning the game. Now, the 71 absolutely helps, but you're trying to get the win and you get the flowers from the 71 points.
And this was the real, just to add one more thing before you go on, what was even more impressive to me, he scored or assisted on 99 of their 146 points that night, again, because of overtime. That was the really eye-popping part for me. And
by the way, they played 2 days later, they won again. Like, they won again. Now, they only scored like 90 points. They beat, I think, Phoenix like 90 to 88 or something.
And he had a rough game. It wasn't on Mitchell to win. That, that shows you how good the Cavaliers can be.
Listen, I'm just telling you, if you go 71, I don't know if I should expect 70 the next night that you end up playing. But again, wonderful performance. I do want to mention one thing about the Cavaliers and then one other topic I wanted to broach on this and then move on to the next one. The Cavaliers, I agree with you. I don't see anything that they have to do to become a contender. I think as long as to me, it's literally just health based. And we've seen this team battle some health issues before.
Yep.
But from a roster construction standpoint, we've always talked about how you need 2 minimum, maybe 3 superstars to sort of win it. Cleveland doesn't have that right now, but they have dudes that are emerging that could be considered that eventually. I love Evan Mobley on this team. Darius Garland is tremendous. As you said, is another bona fide number 1 scorer if they need that.
Yeah, I think he's a star. Maybe not superstar, but he's a star for sure.
And, of course, Donovan Mitchell being sort of the big straw that helps everything sort of go. And now that he's got talent and help around him, scoring-wise specifically, man, listen, I think what Brooklyn's doing is really, really good. And I think Milwaukee's just sort of been there, done that. And we got teams that are waiting on health to figure out who they're going to be. I don't see any reason why Cleveland can't get deep into the playoffs and find themselves playing for the Larry O'Brien at the end of the year.
I just want to shout out to Jared Allen, who may not be considered an elite center, but Jared Allen is elite at what he does. He is elite at setting screens, rolling to the basket, gumming up the inside on both ends, just constantly being a presence inside. He is a fearless shot blocker. You can put him on 3 posters a night if you want, and he is still going to meet you at the rim every time, and he's going to embarrass you 3 times at the rim too on any given night. So I love watching Jared Allen play. I think that was such a heady pickup for the Cavaliers to have gotten, even though it was a couple years ago, and it's starting to pay dividends in that, no, you don't want him to be your 3rd best option, but if he's a starter for you and gets to be the 4th or the 5th guy where you don't have to run plays for, and he just can dirty work all the game long, my goodness, like, I think he's the unsung hero out of that group. Garland's been in and out of the lineup with health issues all season. You got to hope that he gets going. And they've got some other really interesting defenders out of that group, Lamar Stevens and Isaac Okoro and so forth. And those are the bodies that you're going to have to throw at a Kevin Durant in the playoffs. You're going to have to throw at a Jason Tatum, and a Giannis. I just feel like they've got the personnel now to match up with any of those other Eastern Conference elite teams and have a very good fighting chance against them. They're built to play just about anybody now.
I think what I love, and I told you how much I liked Isaac Okoro coming out of college. I think he has settled into a role that's more comfortable for him now.
Mm-hmm.
When he first came out, I think he felt pressured to be like one of the top 2 scorers on that team.
Mm-hmm.
And now that he doesn't have to be that, he can play more defense and he can be more defensive oriented. I think you see a lot better play from him than what you probably saw in his first couple of seasons there at Cleveland. Only issue I have is the mustard yellow jerseys. I can't get on board with those. I keep trying. It's just really hard on the ice.
I'm there.
One quick thing I wanted to mention before I bring up the next topic. I saw somebody on the old Twitter say right after the 71 was scored by Donovan that every night there's a 40 burger going up, and I'm like, that can't be right. So you know what? I thought this was one of those old heads. It's just like,
mm-hmm.
back in my right. So I just picked this exact same time frame, and I chose like 1993. Right? I just picked a year, and like you got people forget how much score there was in the NBA for a long period of time.
Yeah,
right. There weren't that many
until you got to the late 90s. Yeah,
there weren't that many teams that were playing like allowing 88 points a game and scoring 96. Okay, it's just a completely different thing. And then I looked through the same 5-day stretch just to see the leading score, and this may be a little bit of a higher scoring week than it was back then. I think there was one that week that was over 40.
Certainly more than 93. You go back maybe to like 88, though, you might be surprised. You get back
I did
into
also
the 80s.
choose 87 for another one, and there were 2 40-point performances there and then. But I sort of understood the point, And it's just a random week. It's not like the week after Christmas is this magical week of scoring, every single year. Just kind of wanted to see what the old head was talking about.
It does kind of feel like as soon as Luka got his 60, it feels like there's been a one-upping competition going on
Even
over
LeBron's
the last 2
putting up
weeks.
40s, right? Like LeBron's going for 40 in multiple games. You're just like, all right, brother, you're 400. Relax, okay? You don't have to do this. Maybe you do because your team's not that great, but let me then ask you this next topic. Zion Williamson out for a few weeks with a hamstring issue. No surgeries needed at this point, just some rest, relaxation, and rehab. Joe, we were both on the Pelicans as far as being a sporty team coming into this season. A lot of that was Herb Jones and how great he was defensively, just sort of a breakout player last season for that team in their playoff push in 2021-22. Zion Williamson being out does hurt. I think Zion even went like 10 of 12 in that game too. That they ended up getting hurt in. So he's been playing really, really well. He was starting to, be in the discussion for an MVP consideration as the season progresses. Again, we're a third of the way through the year, so who knows? Him being out for the next 3 weeks. That I want to ask you about for the Pelicans. Is that a deep blow for these next 3 weeks, or is New Orleans a deep enough team that they can weather the storm for this next close to month and get Zion back and get ready to go toward the All-Star break and beyond?
The answer to the question is the guy that we didn't mention yet, and that's Brandon Ingram, who's been out since November 25th, which is my birthday. He's coming back.
Is that how you celebrated?
Yeah. Brandon's gone. Hooray. He's supposedly like day to day at this point. He's been practicing, but hasn't been doing 5-on-5 work yet. So if they can get Ingram back within the next week to 2 weeks, I think they're okay. If this lasts quite a while for Brandon, and he's been a guy, we talk about Zion being hurt, but Ingram's been he's been easy to nick up over the last couple of years too. If he's out for much of that stretch, I think the best New Orleans can do is probably 500 basketball, which is still a testament to the guys that they have, CJ McCollum included, Jonas Valanciunas, and all those guys. They can maybe swing 500 basketball, but that probably drops them in this tight Western Conference, probably down into the play-in field again. For New Orleans to be a true threat, I don't care what their seeding winds up being. Yeah, it'd be a great story if they can have home court advantage finally in New Orleans after all these years. That'd be amazing. I don't think the seeding really matters. For them to be dangerous, they're going to need Zion and Brandon Ingram healthy come playoff time. It's a very cliche and obvious thing to say, but this is classically one of those teams that they had a nice run last year, and they put the fear of God into the Phoenix Suns during that first round series. Right. But are they experienced enough, talented enough, deep enough to battle with the big boys in a second or third round series? Maybe, but you got no shot if you don't have your top two there. And then if you do, there's something there, because Ingram is a plus defender when engaged. Zion has been a plus defender this year. That's been one of the sneaky little things going on. They've been running the ball through him a lot more, giving it to him to bring down the court, because they don't play with a conventional point guard in the starting lineup. It's been CJ McCollum, but they kind of trade ball handling duties and who initiates the offense. But Zion has been a plus defender defensively for them, and his plus minus numbers look really, really good, to where you go, okay, I see the occasional elite defensive play, and I saw that in the past, but he was a guy who was giving up a lot of what he got on the court when he was healthy. That hasn't been happening this year. He's been engaged and more than passable, which is a great building block for a guy who can score so seemingly effortlessly on the other end with his athleticism, and a guy who does not stretch the floor but gets everything in the paint against defenses that are designed to stop that.
So forgive me if I'm misreading into how you are speaking about this team. You do not seem high on the possibility, or you don't sound high on the possibility, that this could be your representative out of the West, even if healthy.
No, because I do believe when all things are fairly equal, that experience and that roster cohesiveness, that even fan bases experience, the whole organization having gone through this a few times, I think that means something. And New Orleans had a nice showing last year, but they were a team that barely got into the play-in and then got hot. They're playing good basketball right now. They're taking that proverbial next step, but ahead of them, teams like Denver, teams like Memphis, even like Dallas, the Clippers to some extent, Golden State for sure, Phoenix for sure. All of those teams that they would conceivably see in a second round series or further have all been there before, and been there further than New Orleans has as a group, as a battle-tested group, or in the case of the Clippers, most of the group has played together, and then Kawhi's obviously done it at an elite level elsewhere before, so I don't worry about him so much. That means something, even if New Orleans, top flight talent-wise, can hang with just about any of those teams.
All right, Joel, I'm going to get you out of here on this one. It was announced last night by the Warriors at Wednesday night, as of speaking in this recording, that Steph Curry is targeting to come back next Friday. That's the 13th. The team is set to start a road trip in San Antonio. I believe it's a 6-game road trip starting in San Antonio. I do think it's interesting. One thing to point out, and then I want your thoughts on Steph Curry. Did you know that this is wild to me. This here, I'm pointing right now, this here Golden State team has the second highest home to road point scoring differential since the merger. So they are scoring nearly. I had the stat up. Let me find it for you. They are averaging 19.8 fewer points on the road than they are at home, which is the second
Mm-hmm.
biggest differential since the Nuggets did it in 88-89 when they had 20.7 points per game. While this team is so different, we always talk about home court advantage, right? It's a thing,
Mm-hmm.
but to be that different at home versus the road is interesting. Maybe you can incorporate that into what you think about the Steph Curry full Warriors coming up. But Steph Curry to come back after not playing for about a month starting next week when they will be on the road where they don't score points. I guess it doesn't hurt to have Steph Curry back then, no?
Get him back as soon as possible. Andrew Wiggins should be back soon. That's been one where everybody's talked about Steph and his absence and how big of a deal that is. Sure. But let's not forget how important Andrew Wiggins has been to this Warriors team the last couple of seasons. And you talk about them struggling defensively and sometimes not being able to make big plays. Steph Curry is not the reason that they're struggling defensively, but Andrew Wiggins' absence, I think, has a lot to do with that. And the ability to make big plays is not just Steph hitting crazy shots, which he does, but to be able to have a guy that you can run mid-range ISO with. That's not necessarily Klay Thompson's game anymore. Klay Thompson is running off of pin downs. He's still there as an outlet valve off of screens and to hit knockdown shots. But it's Andrew Wiggins that you're going to throw the ball into the post and let him go to work. The Warriors really don't have another guy like that. So this is huge. And when you talk about that field goal disparity or that scoring disparity, that's usually a hallmark of a young team. Young teams that are pretty decent usually do very well at home, have a winning record there, and then struggle on the road because they're not experienced enough, maybe not mentally tough enough, whatever, on those days that you're jet lagged, on the times that your legs are really dead in the middle of the season, to go into a hostile environment, to take care of business, to stay focused, to not allow that, oh, well, I guess we didn't get this one type of mentality to seep in already in the second quarter, which does happen with young teams if they're struggling. The Warriors' young guys getting a taste of that. I don't know if they're at full strength, if this disparity would be anywhere near that bad, because you can have those nights where you got the dead legs and everything, but you're at home and the crowd lifts you up and gets that adrenaline going, and you fight through it because you don't want to disappoint, your ticket holders and that sort of thing. So I am very intrigued, and I have not jumped off the Warriors bandwagon at all yet. You and I have talked about this. I've understood the concern. I've thrown lots of caveats in there as well, but I'm not off the bandwagon yet. And give me a fully healthy Warriors team after the All-Star break here, with the young guys having had a chance to settle in and get a little bit more experience now being on this stage with this type of pressure. And I know that they've been in some of those situations before, but I do think Golden State is still going to be a major player in the Western Conference by the time we get to the playoffs, health being the major factor there.
I don't completely disagree. I do worry a little bit because we've never sort of seen the kind of shot production put up by guys like Klay Thompson and Steph Curry like we've seen in the NBA now and with those two guys. So you just wonder how these old haggard bones get even more old and haggard with a different type of wear and tear than what we're sort of used to. It's not the banging in the paint as we're used to, but also Steph Curry does a bunch of banging in the paint because he runs 7 miles a game, it feels like.
Yeah.
Let me correct my stat real quick and then we'll wrap up. The stat was the largest point differential between home and road. So they average scoring 9.7 points more than their opponents at home. They are outscored by 10.1 points per game on the road, and that's the second largest differential since the merger. Number one, by the way, the Nuggets, as I mentioned, sort of attribute that. Some people attribute that to the altitude,
right,
because them in Utah, they're represented a lot on that list of teams that are in that differential, and you can sort of kind of see it because of the altitude itself. Golden State, not as high up off the ocean as San Francisco is, as is Utah and Denver, or Denver and Salt Lake City. Okay, Joe, I think Steph Curry's fine. He's the best player of all time. There is no discussion about it. No, I do worry about the team. I do worry. The age concerns me. The ability to get, we always talk about when they get healthy, when they get right, when they get back. We're getting to the point where we can't guarantee that
We
anymore.
cannot.
We cannot just say, all right, they're young bucks that haven't gone through a lot of this. Steph Curry's getting a lot of nagging stuff, and it's taking Klay Thompson a long time to get to, respectable, and then now playing really, really well and getting to a version of Klay Thompson that was really, really good. That's still very productive and very good. It's just not quite, even though we literally just saw him go for a billion points. I don't think it's as frequent as we see those kind of outputs.
And it creates a domino effect on your other veteran players too. When Steph and Klay are out for a long period of time, that's going to mean more minutes and more exertion for Draymond Green or Kevon Looney, which sets them up that by the time Steph and Klay come back, they're probably going to need a breather or something's breaking down and they might miss some time. And that is one of the issues with veteran teams, as you pointed out, especially one that's been together for a long time, that's been through these wars before. You get somebody back who you've been waiting on forever, like now's the time to go, and somebody else goes down now for 3-4 weeks, and you just can't get that consistency. And circling back, that's going to be the same question mark with New Orleans. Do you get Brandon Ingram and Zion back at the same time for a long period of time to keep that chemistry rolling in the playoffs? It's the same question for Cleveland getting into the playoffs. Do you get Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell together? So this is not a problem that's unique to Golden State. But as you pointed out, when the whole group of the very key guys is veteran and you're not going anywhere without those guys, and it's not just Steph and Klay, it's Andrew Wiggins as well. It's Draymond as well. Kevon Looney gets thrown in there now because James Wiseman has not been ready to go. Like, you're not going anywhere unless that core is feeling good going into the playoffs. But if they are, now all of a sudden everybody back on board that bandwagon because they're going to be a threat, even if there might be some teams that are a little more elite this year.
And what has been the major storyline for the last two postseasons? It's the team that's the healthiest that at the end of the year that has been able to make those pushes and knock some of those beaten and battered teams out of the playoffs pretty quickly. So
that's been a storyline throughout most championships, especially in the modern era, for sure.
Yeah. I don't count the COVID one because everyone had COVID. I'm just convinced everyone was in the COVID bubble because they had COVID. And that was not the other way around. They were trying to keep COVID out. I think they were just all like, hey, let's just keep it here. I think it's a fair way to look at it. I think that's a fair way to end this. The Michael Finley episode, Joel C. Cortez. That was a good piece of business.
Yeah, and if you want to catch the video-only version, find us on YouTube, like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. I guess not video only. There's audio with it too. We're not just going to see us pantomiming. But I mean, turn off the sound if you want.
I pantomimed at the very beginning. You saw a lot of hands.
You did. You did. Way to bring that back full circle. If you want the audio only version, Spreaker, Spotify, iTunes is where you get this here podcast. Arky, Shea, I'll let you take us home with whatever other pantomiming you want to do.